Dr. Natalie Marks, and welcome back to another Quick Cup of Knowledge. Joining me today is Dr. David Andrews, a decorated U.S. military veteran and also president of Purple Heart Consulting, a management consulting firm specializing in resilience, authentic leadership, and organizational culture. Dr. Andrews, thanks so much for joining us, and most importantly, thank you so much for your service.
Thank you, Natalie. It was my honor to serve, and thank you for the gift of your time.
Well, we're very excited to hear some of your perspective today, and I want to start by getting to the basis of how did you come up with Purple Heart Consulting? And I know obviously you have a very intense military background and a lot of experiences that have shaped that, but I'd love in your own words to hear how that came about.
Yeah, I was wounded in action, so I'm a Purple Heart recipient. I was wounded on my 4th combat tour. And Purple Heart Consulting came about when I was doing my doctorate in management. I focused on authentic leadership and how combat trauma affects us as leaders. And I did my research interviewing other combat wounded veterans, and to a person, they were so enthusiastic about, you need to share our story, you need to share our message. And Purple Heart Consulting really, it came about to share the lessons, the life lessons, the wisdom that we get as Purple Heart recipients going through that crucible of combat injury and learning how to persevere through adversity, learning how to put those life lessons into practice.
That's fantastic, and I certainly hope we can take time at another time to learn a little bit more about some of the projects you're working on. But one I'm really intrigued at as a veterinarian is Remount. And so that's an equine assisted therapy program that you're working with to help military veterans and their families. And I really would love to hear more about that and maybe some success stories that you can share with us.
Certainly. So I am an alumni as well as the president of the foundation. I went through the equine assisted learning in 2010 after I was struggling with a very long, painful recovery from my wounds. But a lot of it had to do with learning how to adjust with who the new person I am is, with the disabilities, with transitioning from active duty military to peacetime, and frankly, transitioning much earlier than I'd planned on. I mean, no one plans to get wounded, and you certainly go through a roller coaster of emotions and physical adjustment when that happens, and it's difficult. It's a life-altering experience, and it's disorienting. And what the Remount Foundation did for me, and it does for over the 4,500 veterans and families that we've helped over the last 11 years, is it helps you take ownership of your healing, which is a key element of any kind of well-being and resilience and recovery and hope and healing, is taking ownership of your story and taking ownership of your healing. And we use the horse as a metaphor to build that new narrative, to build that new identity of who you are. You certainly don't lead the rest of your life defined by your injuries. As a matter of fact, most of us would say it's a catalyst. The injuries are a catalyst for us achieving what our purpose is supposed to be. So what I tell people what Remount does is it helps you get your foot in the stirrup and your backside in the saddle, and you get to ride to wherever life is going to take you. But the important thing is that you're able to get back into the saddle and ride. That's the Remount. And so what we do is we guide gently in an amazing environment out of the United States Air Force Academy Equestrian Center. But we guide these warriors, these heroes and their families to healing and to hope and to purpose and home. Ultimately, that's what it's about. And some of the success stories, the different types of trauma that we see. It's not all combat trauma. There's military sexual trauma, rape survivors, there's child abuse. I mean, there's all sorts of horrific trauma. But the common thread with all of that is these amazing people go through this transformative journey back home, and they come out the other side with a newfound sense of purpose of wanting to help others and wanting to contribute for something positive in society. And it's wonderful. And I've seen one anecdote is I saw a soldier. I was out at our equestrian center doing another project, and I saw a new participant, an Army soldier, Lieutenant Colonel, who'd done multiple combat tours. And he was walking, just stumbling around the equestrian center, 1,000-yard stare. If you've ever heard of that, I mean, he's stuck in the memories of war and his experiences. And I went up to him, and I had my Purple Heart ball cap on, and he said, "You're a Purple Heart recipient." I said, "Yeah, and it's going to get better, I promise you." And I said, "I know the reason you're here. It's not because you want to heal for you. It's because you want to heal for the others who love you, your family." And that was it. He started bawling. And I started bawling too, because I went through it. And it was just that moment of building a connection right then that said, I've been where you have been. I'm 10 years further down the road, and I promise you it gets better. But I've also had that same conversation with a teenager who came into our program. He had lost his mom to suicide less than a year earlier. Same thing, just stumbling. He was not living, he was just existing. And a year later, you see both this decorated combat wounded veteran and this young teenager both have that same transformation back to purpose, to smiling, to having hope, to being able to reach out and connect with others. And it all starts with the horse. It's wonderful.
It truly is, and I'm lost in your stories because it gives so much purpose to our role as veterinarians of really how animals can connect to people on such a deep level, even in situations where they have these incredibly deep wounds, both mentally and physically. And I wish I could do more. I want to do more. I'm so glad you're here. You did touch, though, on your last story about people touched by suicide. And, you know, our profession right now is struggling with a lot of mental well-being challenges, compassion fatigue, and unfortunately having a very high rate of suicide. You speak a lot on this, and I know it's something that you deal with quite a bit with veterans. What are some words of hope or optimism or pearls that you abide by that help people that you counsel that might also be words of wisdom for us?
You bet. So I developed what I call the 5C framework. There's 5 elements that you have to build any kind of resilience, whether it's individual or organization or an entire profession. And it's community, connection, culture, commitment, and courage. Those 5 elements. And each addresses a certain facet of need. The big one, as we're talking just very briefly, is the element of courage. It takes a lot of courage to ask for help, but it's the most difficult thing you'll do, but it's the best thing you'll do, and that's the but in this. You can't go this alone. I will tell this to the veterinary industry till I'm blue in the face, and I'm not speaking because I have. This has nothing to do with degrees. It has nothing to do with, epiphany moments. What it has to do is hard-earned experience of struggling with suicide myself. I should not be here. I don't know why I survived the battlefield, and I frankly struggled with suicide so bad when I got back. I should not be here. And I tell audiences that because this requires discussion and dialogue, and it requires a bit of courage to open yourself up, to show some authenticity, to say, I understand this, not just a data-driven process. It's a human endeavor. And the courage for those 1 in 6 veterinarians who struggle with suicide, and I spoke this morning, and I want to say a third of the audience raised their hand up when I asked who had struggled or is struggling with suicide. I think the key to this is, for those 1 in 6, it's finding the courage to seek help, to take ownership of your own healing. It's allowed. You should. It's your story. It's your life. You have meaning. You have purpose. Your purpose isn't to die by your own hand. Your purpose is to help others. That's why you come into this industry and this profession. Likewise, for those others who may not have lost someone yet, or who are blessed enough not to struggle with it, You have to encourage those people to get help. You have to find the programs that exist and support them so that we can create helping. The veterinary industry is not in this fight by itself. This is not something where the veterinary industry has to create all these new resources. The resources exist. What you have to do, this the element of connection, is not only connect one-on-one with human beings and build that bridge to healing, but connect as a community and say, listen, no single entity, no single person is going to solve this challenge. What it's going to take is working together. The veterans community, I know the veterinary community struggles. It is nowhere near what the veterans community has to fight. 17 to 22 veterans each day commit suicide. Now we're early mid-afternoon as we do this interview. We've lost 12 already. When is that ever going to be okay? It's not. So, my hope is that the veterinary community has this opportunity, and it's a wonderful community, to take some leadership. We can own this together. There's a culture change that has to happen, and we talk about culture, and sometimes I think we talk about it without fully understanding what it is. But there's an ability, all of us own the culture. That's the great thing about culture. And there's this ability to make a change with all these new students coming into the profession, with this shift from male-dominated industry to female-dominated industry. There's opportunities for change. And the way we do that, again, is courage. The courage to reach out and get help for ourselves, but also the courage to reach a hand out and help others. That's how we're going to overcome this challenge.
Your bravery and your own courage and strength is so inspirational to me, and I know to everyone who's just been listening and hearing you share your story. Thank you for your commitment and for finding your own healing so that you can help us. And thanks for joining us today.
It's an honor to serve, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.